Dzień dobry Państwu. Good afternoon, Professor Russo. Thank you for coming to us. Thank you for coming to Katowice again. I hope not the last one. Proszę Państwa, bardzo serdecznie witam wszystkich tu zgromadzonych i przed ekranami komputerów na kolejnym seminarium poświęconym przemyśleniu tego, czym jest dzisiaj, czym powinno być kształcenie uniwersyteckie, jaki jest dzisiaj status wiedzy akademickiej, gdzie ona powstaje, w jaki sposób komunikować się za pomocą wiedzy ze społeczeństwem. Przyjął nasze zaproszenie profesor Pedro Russo z Uniwersytetu w Lejdzie, z którym już jesteśmy zaprzyjaźnieni niemalże. Odwiedza nas kolejny raz, a pełni także niezwykle ważną funkcję, prócz typowych funkcji akademickich, jako adiunkt czy też asystent profesor na Uniwersytecie w Lejdzie. Jego specjalizacja to astronomia oraz społeczny wymiar, społeczny kontekst nauki. Komunikacja społeczna za pomocą i poprzez naukę to są jego obszary pracy i zainteresowań. Pełnił bardzo ważne funkcje, jeśli chodzi o międzynarodowe instytucje zajmujące się astronomią. Był między innymi koordynatorem Światowego Roku Astronomii. No więc już jakby ta funkcja pokazuje miejsce i pozycję, jaką zajmuje w akademickim świecie, nie tylko Holandii, ale świata. Jego rodzimy kraj to Portugalia. No a teraz coraz częściej bywa u nas. Mam nadzieję, że to będzie trwało. Dla nas profesor Russo jest ważny także z tego powodu, że jest jednym z głównych organizatorów i koordynatorów Europejskiego Miasta Nauki Lejda 2022. Stąd nasza współpraca na pewno będzie i na tym polu rozkwitać. Chcemy się przyglądać uważnie, czynimy to już zresztą, jak Lejda się do święta swojego przygotowała. Ten program, który przygotowali, jest znakomity. Będziemy tam czerpać inspiracje i pomysły, ale także traktujemy to jako rodzaj szlachetnego wyzwania, żeby zrobić to co najmniej równie dobrze u nas. Dzisiaj poprosiliśmy profesora Russo, aby opowiedział nam trochę o systemie kształcenia w Lejdzie, ale także podzielił się swoimi doświadczeniami, wiedzą, refleksjami na temat relacji między nauką i społeczeństwem, problemem, który dla nas jest również niezwykle istotny, w jaki sposób komunikować coraz bardziej skomplikowaną i złożoną wiedzę powstającą w uniwersytetach ze światem zewnętrznym, w jaki sposób przebić się przez pewien naturalny egocentryzm i samozwrotność nauki akademickiej i budować partnerstwo społeczne, ponieważ bez rozumienia wagi edukacji zaawansowanej i nauki uniwersytety publiczne po prostu nie mogą funkcjonować, a na pewno nie mogą funkcjonować dobrze. Wiele sobie obiecuję z tego wykładu i później z rozmowy. Zachęcam Państwa do pytań, ponieważ doświadczenia profesora Russo są rzeczywiście unikalne, zarówno jako naszego kolegi profesjonalnego, ale bardziej jeszcze jako kogoś, kto nieustannie penetruje, bada i tworzy rozmaite ścieżki porozumienia między nauką a społeczeństwem. Zapraszam wszystkich Państwa na wykład. Profesor Russo, floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming today. I know that it's one of the first talks of this series, of the seminars that you see in person, so I really appreciate that you're taking the time. And thank you also so much for the introduction. I think I got some key words. Yes, I'm from Portugal. Yes, I work at Leiden University, where I'm a university professor in science and society. Even if I work a lot in astronomy topics, I also got the astronomy one. And I'm gonna be talking a bit about some of the work that I've been doing, trying to understand how universities can really be hubs for societal change. So I'll try to provide some setting the scene, trying to understand a bit what is the perception that we see from Leiden University, and also trying to give some examples of some of the projects that we've been running in the Netherlands, but also specifically at Leiden University. So that's going to be kind of the talk that I have prepared for today. So I guess we can start. So, setting the scene. I guess we all agree that the universities, and this has been documented for quite some decades, they have like these three main anchors in terms of the work that they provide for society in many ways. One of them is, of course, to provide high quality higher education, to provide education that can really serve society, to train the future generation of professionals, and that's a big an important component of a university. I think most of the academics even say that is the main definition of a university. It's an institution that provides post-secondary education. Of course, we know that nowadays the way that we look at universities is so that they have a cutting-edge research agenda. They provide and they conduct research. And I think in one way or another, they also have this societal engagement component. They play an important role in their communities, sometimes at the local level, but sometimes even at the national and global level. And I think these are called the three missions of a university: education, research, societal impact, or societal engagement. However, when we look at the resources, and when I tell resources can be people, can be time, can be funding, that is dedicated to these three main components of the university, the situation changes dramatically. And this is across any university in Europe. You put a lot of, depending on the university, you either put more resources, more professors, more lecturers in education. You might have a research-intensive university that then you have a high component of postdocs, PhD student researchers. But your societal engagement component is going to be always the smaller, if not the smallest, and sometimes quite small and quite tiny. So we see a big difference between the three missions of the university and then the real commitment from, I will say university, but I'll explain a bit, in terms of societal impact. And this is across universities across Europe and across the world. And why is this happening? And I think we need to do some reflections here. And when we look at the way that the universities have been evolving in the last decades, we also know that the pressure and the way that they function changed dramatically in the last 20, 30, 40, even 50 years. And that is maybe the ones that I know that I'm also maybe some colleagues from economy and then even some colleagues from social sciences. There was a massive movement in the early 80s called the New Public Management that changed the way that universities run nowadays. This new public management look at the public sector, including universities, as almost public sectors. Let's try to run the government as a public sector, as a business. Let's look at how can we make the process of the government more efficient. How can we improve the efficiency of the services that we have in the government, also at universities. So the focus of universities became more on the efficiency and also to become a bit more competitive. And this new public management, they have massive implications for research. That was the beginning of the research funding agencies. So now the funding doesn't go directly to the universities, but now universities need to apply to get funding to implement their own research. So from that moment, the researchers were embedded in a competitive environment where they have to compete with colleagues within their universities and at the times with the other universities. This was a trend that started in the US, in Europe, and now we see it everywhere. And of course, it created a massive new structures for the way that universities are run and are actually implemented. Also, we saw a bit of a shift in terms of the public value of research. And this shift happened that for a long time universities had independence to conduct research or seek for new knowledge for the sake of knowledge, with some, of course, cases applied knowledge. But there was a massive push to have this idea of knowledge to be useful for the market. Not so much for society, but for the market. To try to serve the market needs. And this is due to this new public management. And we saw that at that time, also the universities changed the way that they look at their societal impact. In the early 90s, we see that most of the universities start having their communication departments, their press relations people, because there was a massive need to improve the visibility of the universities to make them more competitive in these competitive environments. So you need to have media people to write the press releases, to say that you got these grants, to say that this researcher is now doing this work. So there was a push into more marketization of research, much more to think about communication of public engagement as societal engagement. And we have conducted research on that, and actually we found that. This is a publication from 2020, where we did a survey across many European countries, also countries like Japan, United States, and Taiwan. And we found that one of the main motivations for research units, research centers, to do public engagement activities is to raise their visibility, to raise the profile of the institution. And that's what we say, that the public communication of research might be turning into a marketing exercise that in our perspective can be quite dangerous when we look at the role that universities should have. It's not only about communicating results, it's really about having impact in the societies where they operate. And also one of the challenges that we see is that for the funding agencies, so the ones that are providing money for research, and sometimes also the money for education, when they think about societal impacts, they think about two main outcomes. The academic outcomes, publications, how many papers are you going to have, what's your H index, how much money did you manage to attract, and I know that there's a lot of academics here, and you feel that pressure constantly nowadays. We also see some of the societal impact, like the economic and business outputs. How many patents do you have? How many commercial relationships do you have with a specific business? And all this makes sense. But this is a very narrow view. What is societal impact? I think we need, and before I show what I think we need, how broad this needs to be. And this is for funding agencies, how they perceive societal impact. What is interesting, for example, in the Netherlands, is that the government doesn't see it this way. There is a vision document from the Ministry of Science, Education and Culture in the Netherlands, and this is kind of the strategic document for research and science in the Netherlands, and they talk about this science communication as a two-way process, the public needs to be involved. We really see that the researchers need to play an important role in society. But then we don't see that happening when the funding or how the research agencies are looking at it. So also OECD, in the framework that was released in 2019, they also mention that when we measure impacts, we need to look at education, outreach, knowledge dissemination, scientific support for public policies, and social responsibility of research. So in the policy documents, all this is there, but something is failing. So I think when we look at societal impacts, and I think we need to really go beyond the metrics of research or the metrics of the economic and business systems, we need to look at other societal sectors, the media, the pre-university education, the cultural and the civil society as a whole. And I think also universities need to play a role on public policy, advise policymakers in developing better policies for society. I think those impacts are very important for universities. So most of my research is looking at the way that the research community, especially researchers or research centers, are engaging with society. So some of the discussions that I'm going to have here today are really about the role that universities, academics, and researchers can have in society. And I think if we think about universities, I think we need to think at universities in an engaged way. Universities need to be more engaged with society, and that's what I'm going to be talking a bit about it. Also, one of the challenges that we have at university is this problem definition, because we know that we now, and that's also a big challenge at the moment at universities, universities have been asked to solve a lot of problems, a lot of issues. We have the Sustainable Development Goals. We have so many social and societal challenges that we need to solve. Universities have been asked to do that. And that's really, really challenging. We know that most of these problems that people call wicked problems are very challenging. for several reasons. Every problem is unique. Even sometimes they are correlated. Most of them have this multi-stakeholder involvement. There's not only one person or one group of people involved. Usually it's a very complex system. The solutions are not also very clear. And I think that's one of the big challenges that we have with some of these wicked problems. If we talk about climate change, if we talk about the pandemic, if we talk about the refugee crisis, all these wicked problems are difficult to tackle because there's not one single solution. They don't have one solution, and that's why it's very difficult to even sometimes start to act. So it is essential that universities, when they're trying to tackle some of the societal problems and some of these wicked problems, that we need to innovate and also need to experiment. I think we need to be experimentation labs where we can try different solutions and we can really try to think, design and implement some solutions. Some of them will work, some of them will not work. But I think it's the role of the universities to really try to do that. To really try new solutions and really try to understand what can be done. I'll give you an example. I think I might just make sure. That's my previous slides. When we look at the way that the researchers are involved with society, we also need to think if society really wants to participate also in some of the science. And one of the interesting results, I don't know if you have seen, there's these surveys that they are done across the European Union. It's called Eurobarometers. They do Eurobarometers about different topics. And it was released, the Eurobarometer, very recently about science, technology, and Europeans. And they asked, I think, around 50 or 51 questions to more than 50,000 Europeans in all different member states of the European Union. And they asked one important question: if we should involve or not non-scientists in research and technology. And we can see, and independent from the country, that you will find that most of the countries, I think Hungary is the only one that has under 50%, they want to see non-scientists involved in research and technology. So the Europeans want to have an active role in science and technology. And I think that's an interesting result that makes us think that actually society outside this campus want to participate. They are keen and eager to participate. So I think it's also up to us to create that environment where they can participate. How can they participate? When we think about societal engagement, and I'm going to give some almost typologies of participation, we think about situations where the researchers go out and give a public talk, where they go out and inform the public about their research, some of the results that they have, some of the facts. Like this information, usually one way. I have some knowledge, you don't know that much about it, I'm going to give you some knowledge. But we see many other forms of societal engagement. For example, discussion. Bring the public and try to have a discussion. Trying to have some inputs from them in terms of the research that is happening. You can also do some consultation. And this is a session that we did with a municipality close to Leiden, where the city wanted to build a small science center. So what we did, we put the municipality officials, so the mayor together with some of other officials, together with some members of the public, and they had a consultation session trying to see if we bring a science center to our community, what kind of things should we be doing? So there were teachers, there was NGOs, there were many other organizations involved, and they had this consultation session where they could provide some inputs about what for them a science center should be. So this is something that we organize. You can also involve the public in some of the research. and it's a very trendy word, and I will talk a bit more about that, called citizen science. How can we get citizens to participate in science? And I'll give you an example of a project that we did. And so we really need to create opportunities for these non-academics to participate in science. You can also collaborate. For example, imagine that you have an environmental NGO that works in the region and trying to measure the quality of the water of the river that you have nearby. Maybe some of your colleagues here at university that work in environmental sciences can work with this organization to do a better analysis, to do a better test of the water quality of water. The other one is supporting, so you let them do it completely. And what we also see is that is quite emerging, and we already have some examples in the Netherlands, including in Amsterdam. And this is a picture from a society in Amsterdam. It's completely run by the, let's say, non-academic staff, and they have an advanced lab where they run experiments on the weekends. They run their own activities. They have their own wet lab. They have a makerspace where it's completely independent from universities. They do some research, and they have even some publications coming out from this. Scientific publications that come out from a lab with no links whatsoever with the university. So this is happening where the whole research process is completely outside the research institutions. And it's quite interesting to see. And is that something that we want or not? It's something for discussion. But those things are happening. They call it public labs. So labs completely run by non-academics. A case study that I have for you is something that we've been doing in the Netherlands. It's about citizen science. And the project started maybe in 2013, where we decided to apply some of the research that we are having actually in astronomy to measure the quality of the air in a certain place. So what's the air pollution of a certain city? And we know that air pollution is a massive problem across Europe, not only in Poland. I also know that in Poland it's also a problem. But air pollution seems that kills a lot of Europeans and a lot of people around the world. But we run this project that we allow citizens, through a very simple add-on for a mobile phone, to measure the quality of the atmosphere above their heads on a particular moment. So this is pretty much a small add-on that you put on your phone, connected with your camera, that enables you to do a spectrum, through a small spectrograph, of the sky above your head. I can tell you more about the technology involved, and it's quite simple, but requires some data analysis. So we did this. We ran this campaign in the Netherlands and some European cities that allow us to have measurements from all across the country in the Netherlands, and with the data that we collected, and pretty much the data is the amount of heavy particles that you have in the atmosphere, because the spectrum, we're going to see these particles there. And we managed to create a map of the air quality for the Netherlands for that particular day. And our data is slightly better than the data that you get from a satellite, because you have this confirmation from many data points. And this was done in 2013. And we got several publications, but one of them, the main publication, actually we also include all the citizens, the 3,000 people that participated in the measurements, as co-authors of the publication. So we have, and we had a big fight with the publication because we want to have all the names, but they didn't let us have the 3,000 names, so we find a compromise to have them on a website of these 3,000 citizens. They have zero knowledge of the technology of the science, but they participated in the data collection, and they were informed about the whole process. Because of this, we started the Citizen Science Lab. So we create a lab within Leiden University that enables colleagues, but also civic society, to start their own citizen science projects. How do we do this? We usually do a call for research questions, then we involve the stakeholders, then we pilot the project, and then we launch the project. For the colleagues that work maybe with businesses, this is almost like an incubation of a business, right? A startup, business incubation. You think about the problem that you have, what's the technology or the service solution that you have, and then you start developing a company around it. So we use a very similar approach. I'll give you the example of what we did with one project that we actually launched before the pandemic. So we had a call for research questions. So anyone in the Leiden region could submit research questions. So anyone, from kids, and we got a research question from secondary schools, even from primary schools, all the way up to even the city government, the local government, the municipality. And we collected. We had more than 200 questions. We actually had someone looking through all these questions, and 90% of the questions we already had an answer. So we could provide an answer, and we provide an answer. Say, okay, we already know this from research, already know what's the problem, already know that solution. We had 5 questions that were around impossible, if not crazy, to answer, like if there's aliens, or if the CERN, LHC, we're going to start a black hole or not. We had some of those questions, but not that many. And then we selected 10 that could be transformed into a project that could involve the public. And out of those 10, there was a committee that selected one question that was about plastics, trendy topic, and about plastics in the waterways. The city of Leiden is full of canals, there's a lot of water, there's also a lot of plastic, some of them with big dimensions, and these are just cups, for example. And I will tell you a few things about these cups. And so, what did we do? We had this question that came from society. We brought together the people that asked this question, and we have 3 or 4 people about plastics. We brought the scientists together, we brought people from the municipality, and also people from environmental organizations, all together into a room for 3 or 4 sessions where they discussed, presented, and come up with some ideas for a project. So they started this project called Plastic Spotter, and it's pretty much an app, a web app, or you can download the app, that can help you to take a picture when you see plastics in the waterways of Leiden, so in some of the canals, and then this Plastic Spotter collects all this information, and we can map out the amount of plastic, how the plastic goes around the city, and enables us to better understand what's happening to the plastic in the canals. And when this project started, we identified a lot of plastic cups, and after 3 months, the municipality of Leiden decided to forbid plastic cups in the city, in the festivals, or in bars or restaurants. So that was immediately a policy outcome, because the numbers were just way too high. So they decided not to do it. And it was also interesting, this project was launched just before the pandemic. The researchers from Leiden, with this data, they managed to identify a lot of pollution related with the pandemic. This personal protective equipment, like gloves, masks, and etc., that were found in the water, and they could map out all these. And they wrote then a publication, The Effect of COVID-19 Litter in Animal Life, and this was aquatic life. And this publication had a massive impact all around the world. It was on CNN, The Guardian, National Geographic, and this was done with data collected by the citizens, because they knew where to find all these different COVID-related pollution. And that's the outcome of this project that I think was quite timely, of course very sad, and but at the same time quite interesting, how you can get the public to support this data collection. So this is a very clear example of how you can get society involved in the definition of your own research projects. But we know that we have some challenges, institutional challenges, and maybe it's not the case here at the university, and of course our dear rector can comment. But in the same barometer that I mentioned before, people ask if they think that scientists spend enough time communicating their research. And you know, Poland is one of the countries that they think that, yeah, around 36% think that they spend enough time. 36%, is that high or not? Maybe not so high, so high. But across Europe, we know that the public would like to see scientists communicate more. They would like to see scientists to have a more active role in society. And this data was collected during the pandemic, so we know that that has a massive impact on the public perception of the researchers and scientists. But we see that for most of the countries around Europe, Europeans think that scientists don't spend enough time communicating that result. And I think that's an important message that we can get from this particular slide. And why that doesn't happen? From our research across Europe, we know that societal engagement activities by researchers are many times perceived as a waste of time by the researchers. Why? Because these activities don't contribute to their career progression. You know, you getting a publication out, you getting a grant, that contributes for your career, for you to get a job, to go up in your career. You giving a talk to a school, you participate in a citizen science project, that doesn't contribute to your career progression, the way that we look at careers. And that's an issue. Maybe some universities, we see some trends that are different, but across Europe, this is quite common. People look at societal engagement as something that they do on their free time, not something that they see part of their jobs. And this is across many institutions and many universities across Europe. We have some research on that. And most of the excuse that they say, I cannot participate because I don't have the time, or I don't see what that's going to contribute to my career. And that creates this feedback loop that we call it, that because there's no career recognition, anti-engagement culture in some research organizations, some professors tell their PhD students, don't do that because you need to focus on your publications. And it's kind of this infinite loop that sometimes doesn't allow the researchers to actually have a role in societal engagement. And that graph that I showed, the resources available, that's why sometimes it's so short. Because we struggle with this particular career progression issue that we have for people that participate in societal engagement activities. What is interesting is that when we ask directors of research institutes if they should put more resources or less resources for public engagement or societal engagement, in the Netherlands, 54% they say we should put more. So we should do more, we should allocate more money, we should allocate more time. So this is what I see like this, you know, we have from one side policymakers, you have to do more societal engagement, the public wants more, you want the researchers that they would like to do it, but they don't see the time. So something is not working in the middle. Something at institutional level, the support is still not there to allow this to happen. So if we really want to change this and we have more scientists participate in society activities, we need to change some of the structures and some of the ways that we work within universities and research universities. This has been identified in the Netherlands as a problem, so that's why there's a new initiative in the Netherlands called Room for Everyone's Talents. It's a policy document from the Dutch universities and the Dutch government that is trying to find, I'll go directly here, how you can value different careers in academia. How can we move away from publication and grants and we value all different work that you do within the university, from education, from societal engagement, from taking the leadership in in a specific sector. How can we really value the work that is done at university that is more diverse than just getting publications out? And that's very challenging. And there's a big initiative at the moment in the Netherlands trying to understand how that can be done. So in the last bit, I'd like also to talk very shortly, because it's not really my work, but I talk a bit about engaged university and what an engaged university means, but what is an empathic university? A university that can relate with the other. And this is also a massive topic, inclusion, diversity, And these are massive topics being discussed at the moment. This is at the core of Dutch universities at the moment. How can we make sure that Dutch universities are more diverse? How they can better represent the society where they're embedded. In terms of gender, but also in terms of social background, migrant background, etc. How can we make universities more diverse environments? And this is an ongoing and important topic that I would just like to bring it to your attention. The League of Research Universities, Euro, released a document in September 2019, how we can change this at university level. So I think it's a very good reference, and they go into different 4 approaches that I'm not going to expand that much today. How can we make Dutch universities more equal and diverse and inclusive? But I want to say that I also want to say that in empathic universities, for example, doing what you did here, right, is to serve a specific need that was identified very quickly and very sadly by Poland in terms of supporting refugees coming from Ukraine. It's being prepared to act and act fast and provide an incredible list of activities that a university like yours really provided to these refugees. And I think that's also part of the role of an empathic university. What you need to provide to really support the other, especially the other in need. And I think that's a very good example, and the list of activities that I managed to find, it's really incredible. So congratulations, and thank you so much as well. So what are we doing at Leiden University? Just to finish the last part. So actually we just released our strategic document, and the strategic document of Leiden University focuses a lot on these particular actions and activities. Is how can we develop a better, stronger community? How can we make the university also more diverse and equal? And also, how can we get better synergy between university and society? And this is done in many different ways. And I really think that what is relevant for us today here is to look a bit about the 6 main aspects. It's this idea that we need to have room for innovation. And then when I talk innovation, is really try out different things and don't be afraid of failing when you try out. Also, I think this idea of interdisciplinary research and teaching is becoming quite important, and that's one of the areas that we have been working the most. Is how, and I think it's more relevant for this particular seminar, is what are the 8 ambitions from Leiden University for education. And I have them here. Skills. We need to look at the skills needed by society. I think that's something, an exercise to benchmark what are the needs, and that's an exercise that is ongoing. Also, engagement with society. How can you make sure that your education provides opportunities for students to also engage with society? I think students also need to go out as soon as possible, and not just at the end when they pass through the different cycles of education that we have. Activating teaching and learning, so providing real life experience teaching opportunities to our students is also very important. I think we need to think about these academic only activities need to finish. An academic exercise needs to be a real exercise, and I think that's one of the key aspects that we have for our university. I'll just give an example of what we're doing. And at university, for example, we create a learning ecosystem for pre-university education. So we look at the different actors that we have for pre-university education, and now university is keen on giving the opportunity to our students to participate in the many activities that are happening, and they are provided by science centers, by the community centers, etc. So we look at this ecosystem in a much broader way. for example, all the students in Leiden, they get these, students before university, sorry, primary and secondary education, they get this passport that enables them to gain different experiences in different places, including the university. So there's an opportunity for them to go to the university, and the university provides some activities for them so they can engage with the university early on. And this passport is a way for that. There's also a website where they can have a lot of follow-up activities. So it enables also the university to create opportunities for society around them. And also I'd like to say, because I've been involved with our colleagues here in Poland, another example of this multidisciplinary approach for education is the program that they've been developing here about art and design and science. And you can see here a very multidisciplinary approach where you bring arts, design and science together, and you give opportunity for master students from these three domains to come together and try to tackle some wicked problems. And they just told me this morning that the 2022 edition is going to be working with students coming from Ukraine, so it's going to be focusing on Ukrainian refugee students from the arts, from the design and science, and it's going to be supported by US Embassy. So it's a good example how these disciplines can really provide also experiences for them. I'm going to jump now to one of the points that was mentioned in the beginning, and just to finish, is also Leiden this year is the European City of Science, Leiden 2022. This is a year-long celebration of science, of research. We look at science in a very broad sense, not only natural sciences, but social sciences, humanities, engineering. And this is the motto, is 360 days curious. That's the motto of the Leiden, because we really wanted it to be a year-long celebration of science, of research, of the university, and the work that is done at Leiden University, and also by all the stakeholders in the city. So every single day there's at least one event happening. Most of the times it's more than 4 events. And Leiden is a city of around 120,000 inhabitants, so it's a lot of activities. Of course, the greater Leiden, there's many more people, but still there's a lot of things happening at the moment. So just to give you a feeling, what's kind of the feeling of this Leiden 2022, I'll show you 2 or 3 minutes of the opening video of Leiden 2022, so for you to get the feeling. Let's see if it works. And you can see a bit of the city of Leiden, which is a beautiful city that you have to visit.
Welkom op de officiële opening van Leiden European City of Science 2022. Dat is voor iedereen als je maar nieuwsgierig bent. Namens de founding partners mag ik jullie meenemen op een tocht langs deze waanzinnige stad met onderweg een paar voorproefjes van elkaar. Let's go!
Beste kijkers, uw stad is toch de plek waar de moderne wetenschap in Nederland begonnen is. Vertrouw op uw nieuwsgierigheid als kompas. Dan gaat u dit jaar in Leiden een aantal hele bijzondere ervaringen doen. Alle succes!
We zijn nu bij de oudste universitaire sterrenwacht ter wereld. En we zijn hier om het podium te geven aan een bijzonder hoogleraar, faculteitsleraar Emine van Discipline.
Onze nieuwste uitdaging is de James Webb Ruimtetelescoop, de grote nieuwe flagship-missie van de NASA en de ESA. De straling uit de ruimte komt van die kant en die valt dan hier op de hoofdspiegel en weerkaatst het naar de secundaire spiegel. En van daar komt het dan aan de achterkant en daar zitten de 4 instrumenten, inclusief onze nieuwe. Na 25 jaar kleine en bouwen kunnen we niet wachten op dit nieuwe geluid van dit wetenschap.
Inmiddels zijn we aangekomen op het nieuwe Science Park en innovatiedistrict van Leiden. Hier bouwt het Leids Universitair Medisch Centrum een nieuw onderzoekscentrum, speciaal gericht op stamcel- en gentherapie.
NextGen is een initiatief om eigenlijk een pilotfabriek te bouwen waarin je een hele nieuwe gen- en celtherapieconcepten kan testen, zodat er zoveel mogelijk behandelingen naar de patiënten toe kunnen komen. Dus wat je hier gaat zien is hier in Leiden de geneeskunde van de toekomst.
I'm not sure it's the whole video, but this gives the feeling of that we're trying to bring cutting-edge research also to the forefront, including also, and involving all the city. This is the mayor of the city promoting Leiden City of Science. And so the three main streams, let's say, for Leiden City of Science are what we call the knowledge throughout the neighborhoods. Leiden is not a big city, but we define neighborhoods with like 3 or 4 streets altogether, and we're going to have activities in every single neighborhood of the city. And we were just talking before that, for example, the excuse for an activity might be even the name of the street. There's some names of the streets that can be named after a professor of the university from 100 years ago, and then it was a biologist, so we're going to have a biology talk in that particular neighborhood. So we find different excuses to try to connect with the neighborhoods, and it was part of the program to make sure that the activities do happen outside the university and in the neighborhoods and on the streets with the people and close where they live. So that was an important aspect. Of course, the European City of the Science is also very much connected with the European Science Open Forum, which is a large conference about science in Europe. It's going to happen in July, from the 13th to the 16th. And a new component is this European contest of young scientists. So this is a science fair, let's say, where young students, secondary school, are selected at the country level for their projects in science. So they develop a project in the classroom or in the school, and then the national winners come to Leiden for the final competition. So it's like a young tournament for science that is really a science fair. It's a massive science fair with hundreds of kids from all around Europe that they will come and present their own projects in Leiden. So these are the 3 main activities that are happening, and being this one, the festival, imagine like the science festival that I had the opportunity to be here later last year, but imagine doing almost all year round festival of science that is the knowledge throughout the neighborhoods. So just to finish, I think when we think about opening up the university, I think we need to really think about these 4 main components. The societal engagement, teaching that is engaged, so the teaching itself, the education itself needs to already include some of the societal aspects. We really need to create opportunities for knowledge exchange, where the citizens can really, or the society can really also provide inputs to the work that we do. Not only as recipients of knowledge, but also as some part of the knowledge production and knowledge decision. And I think we also have this social responsibility. Either when there's a refugee crisis, when there's other societal issues that we need to tackle, I think universities also need to be responsible for the role that they have in society. So I think that's also very, very important. A lot of things that I mentioned here, there's also explained also in this document from the European University Association, where they really talk about this university without walls, which seems obvious, right? The university needs to go way beyond the buildings where we are, and we need to be something that is open to society and where society can really participate and be engaged. And and to finish, I think really that's the purpose of a university, is really to enable society to look at knowledge and decide what to do with it, but also to have a place in producing this new knowledge. It's really to find what is the role of society in knowledge, in the production, in the use, in the dissemination. And I think that's the essential aspect of a university. Not only to provide knowledge, not only to create new knowledge, but enable society to also have a role in that process. And I think that's what makes a university quite unique places in society. Thank you.